before you ever entered your mother's womb, before your soul dared to cross the veil, before the cells of your body began to divide and shape a name into flesh. Someone was already waiting, not in a hospital room, not in a family, not even on earth, but in the silence before existence. A soul stood still, watching. They weren't waiting for a child. They were waiting for you. Not the version the world would see, but the one they remembered. From a time before time. From a place where names dissolve, but love remains. Because long ago, in a life you don't remember, you promised to return. To find each other again. To finish something that was left undone. And they never stopped holding that promise. Even when you forgot. Even as your soul fell into silence and shadow and sleep. They stayed. In the ether. In the aching glow of unfinished destiny. In the invisible pause between lifetimes. They didn't know where you would appear. They didn't know what name you'd wear, or what body you'd inhabit, or whether you would even believe in them. But they knew you'd come, and they were willing to wait across dimensions, just to meet you again. Because some souls don't just love, they remember. They carry your essence like a sacred fire, and across every lifetime, every war, every forgetting, they wait. You weren't born into randomness. You were born into a story older than the stars, and someone was already turning its next page before your first breath even whispered the word life. Let that sink in. You were waited for, not by chance, not by blood, but by a soul who knew that your arrival would change everything. And now that you are here, they are closer than you think. Still watching, still remembering, still reaching. Because the promise isn't over. It's just beginning. There is a space between lives. Not heaven, not earth. Not a place the eyes can see, but a realm the soul remembers. Some call it the waiting room, a luminous in-between, where time dissolves and only intention remains. It's where souls pause, where they choose, where they prepare. And in that sacred stillness, your arrival was not random. It was prepared for, not just by guides or ancestors, but by someone specific. A soul who had known you before, laughed with you, loved you, lost you, and longed across lifetimes to meet you again. While your soul stood before the great veil, contemplating Earth's chaos and beauty, they stood nearby, silent, steady, unwavering. They didn't try to interfere. They didn't beg for your return. They simply waited. Because they knew, if it's written in the soul, it never truly ends. Your paths would cross again, not by coincidence, but by alignment. Perhaps in this life they're a friend, a stranger, a voice you haven't heard yet, but will recognize instantly when it finally speaks. Because the soul doesn't forget. It remembers frequency, not faces, vibration, not vocabulary, emotion, not explanation. And when that soul who waited finally stands before you, you won't need proof. You'll just know. The eyes may not understand, but the heart will ache in a way only destiny does. You'll feel it as a pause in time, a softness in the air, a recognition deeper than memory. Not a déjà vu, but a homecoming. Because the truth is this, you are not just living a life, you are fulfilling a vow, one made long before this birth, with a soul who's been silently keeping it alive. And now, they are near. The pieces are moving. The thread is tightening. The moment is coming. The promise you forgot, it didn't forget you. And when the time is right, it will find you. There comes a moment when the soul decides to return, not because it must, but because something calls. A whisper, a pull, a memory not of the past, but of unfinished destiny. And as the veil begins to thin, your soul doesn't fall. It descends, through dimensions, through silence, through a tunnel made of memory and light. And just before it enters form, it looks back. Because in that last moment of freedom, it sees the one who waited. They don't speak, they don't reach. They simply exist like a flame at the edge of time. And the soul knows, this is the reason I came back. It wasn't for lessons, or karma, or growth. It was for them, to meet again, to feel what only they can awaken, to finish what was once sacred and broken. Because not every soul returns to evolve. Some return to remember, and in that remembering, something sacred is restored. Then, silence. The veil closes, and the soul enters the womb, wrapped in flesh, cocooned in biology, cradled by heartbeat and blood and bone. But deep within, beneath the forgetting, the soul still burns with that last glimpse, the one who waited. It may not remember their name, but it will recognize their presence. That's why, even as a child, you may have felt it. That strange ache, that longing for something or someone you couldn't explain. That sense that part of you was missing, not in the world, but in time. Because even though you crossed over, your soul never let go of what it saw. And somewhere in this life, that soul is still near, still waiting, still pulling you closer, not with effort, but with gravity, spiritual gravity. You may have already met them, or they may be just one breath away. But the moment of return is approaching, and when it happens, when the soul meets what it has always longed for, everything changes. Not just your life, but your reason for living it. It rarely happens with fireworks. No music swells, no spotlight shines, but something inside you stops, just for a breath, as if time, space, and thought forget how to move. And in that stillness, you see them. Or maybe you just feel them. The person across the room, the voice in the crowd, the eyes that hold something you've never seen, but somehow always known. You don't fall in love. You recognize them, not as a stranger, not even as a friend, but as a memory carved into the bone of your soul, a vibration that fits yours too perfectly to be coincidence. You try to explain it, maybe call it chemistry, attraction, intuition, but deep down, you know it's none of those things. It's remembering. Your body may not know, your mind may question, but your soul weeps with the relief of reunion. Because the one who waited, the one who stood in silence as you crossed into life, they're here. And the ache that's lived inside you for as long as you've breathed starts to ease, not disappear, but soften. Because being near them doesn't just feel good, it feels right, like exhaling for the first time in lifetimes. But here's the mystery. You don't always stay together, and not every reunion ends in harmony. Because sometimes souls meet not to finish love, but to finish healing, to unlock the pain that was once sealed shut, to activate the growth only they can ignite, to complete the very thing that kept them apart last time. And even if the encounter is brief, even if it hurts, it's sacred, because that soul kept their promise. They waited, they found you, and for one fleeting, eternal moment, the cycle was touched by completion. You may feel shaken, changed, ruined by the recognition, but it's not ruin, it's remembering. And once a soul remembers, it can never return to sleep. Something shifts, not on the outside, not in your schedule or surroundings, but inside, deep inside, where time has no language, something begins to wake. You start seeing patterns where there were only coincidences. You hear whispers in moments of silence. You feel watched, not by something threatening, but by something loving, something ancient, something familiar. It's not paranoia, it's presence. Because once a promised soul finds you again, your path can no longer stay ordinary. It pulls you inward, into the depths of questions you never dared to ask, into the shadows of wounds you thought you'd buried, into the light of a purpose you didn't know was waiting. That soul, the one who waited for you, they didn't come to complete you. They came to remind you why you came here at all. And after that meeting, even if they vanish, something remains. A vibration, a crack in the illusion, a subtle shift in the axis of your entire being. Because now, you remember. You are not just living a life. You are walking a design. A sacred architecture made of promises and presence and purpose. And everything begins to rearrange around that knowing. Old desires fall away. Things that once consumed you lose their flavor. You begin to crave something you can't name, because your soul is no longer asleep. The person may fade from your life, or they may stay, quietly orbiting like a moon you once forgot you needed. But their role was never to be permanent. Their role was to activate you, to shake the dust from your spirit, to turn your face back toward the divine blueprint, to stir the ache of remembering so deeply that you finally start to follow it. This is the point of no return, not because life becomes easier, but because now you know what it was always about, and you can't unknow it. You can't go back to sleep, back to pretending this was random, back to a life where nothing meant anything. You've seen the soul behind the veil, and you've felt the pulse of a promise fulfilled. Now, your real journey begins. You came here for a reason, not just to exist, not just to survive, but to remember. And now, you are remembering. It doesn't always look like enlightenment. Sometimes it looks like grief, or letting go, or standing in the middle of your life wondering how everything suddenly feels so different. Because once your soul reactivates, the old world doesn't fit anymore. You can't chase what you used to chase. You can't ignore what you used to numb. You can't pretend you didn't see what you saw when your soul met the one who waited. That moment cracked something open, and through that crack, your purpose began to glow. Not a job, not a title, not a grand achievement, but a frequency. A way of being that resonates with who you were before the world told you who to be. And now, the deeper path begins to rise beneath your feet. Not laid out in front of you, but revealed as you walk it. Every step becomes sacred. Every encounter, a mirror. Every loss, a recalibration toward the truth. And even if the one who waited is no longer beside you, they are never far. Because soul bonds don't break. They become. They become echoes in your intuition, winds in your stillness, clarity in your confusion. And as you move forward, you'll begin to notice something strange. You are no longer the one being waited for. You are now the one who waits, not in longing, but in quiet knowing that someday, somewhere, you will hold space for another soul to arrive. A soul who carries the same spark you once did, the same forgetting, the same ache to remember. And in that moment, you will become the flame at the edge of the veil. You will become the one who stands in silence, watching, loving, trusting that they will find you. And when they do, a new cycle will begin, a new promise, a new return. Because the soul never moves in straight lines. It moves in spirals, in remembrance, in love that echoes beyond life itself. And you are a part of that eternal rhythm. Before you were born, someone waited for you. And now that you are awake, someone is waiting still. If something stirred in you while listening, a memory not from your mind, but your soul, you're not alone. This isn't just a story, it's a mirror. And if you feel seen here, subscribe, because this journey isn't over. Not for you, not for the ones still waiting. And we'll keep walking it together.